Hi, I'm Ernie Medina with TRB. Today we're going to go over firearms cleaning. Now, firearms cleaning is just as important as shooting your firearm, because one of the things you want to do is you want to keep your firearm well maintained pretty much at all times. So after you use the firearm on the range, you want to make sure you clean it that same day, largely because you don't want carbon and whatever else is accumulated on there to get hard and actually stick to the metal of the firearm. So one of the things that I remain disciplined about is making sure that I clean my firearm after every use on that range day. Today we're going to go over how to clean this particular firearm, and today we're actually featuring one of our main partners, Niebling Gun Care, and their product line with firearms cleaning. So before we do anything, as always, we're going to first clear the firearm and make sure there's no ammunition in the room. Now, at this table there is no ammunition, so we got that box checked. However, we're going to make sure we clear this firearm and then disassemble it properly. So I already have the slide lock to the rear. I'm going to visually and physically inspect that there's nothing in the chamber, and then now I know it's clear and I have no ammunition source here. Now I'm going to completely disassemble this firearm. This particular firearm disassembles in 4 major pieces for field cleaning. If you are armor or gunsmith, then it'll go further. But for your general cleaning, general usage, these will be the 4 main parts that you'll break it down into. Typically what I like to do is I like to clean this in a specific order. I start with my lower frame, then work on my slide, guide rod and spring, and then my barrel. Barrel I give the most attention to after the frame, because this is where most of the carbon will accumulate. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to address the frame. So before anything else, I want to go ahead and wipe off anything that's on here first. So anything that I can easily just get and wipe down, I'm going to go ahead and do that right off the bat. Once I get that done, then I'm going to get my cleaning handle and then attach my bore brush. Now, this particular bore brush is pretty interesting in that it's weaved around the center rod differently, where it actually makes each bristle independent. So if, say, one side or one bristle gets flat, the other side does not suffer as well. So I'm going to go ahead and assemble this, set it aside. And then I'm going to go ahead and take my all-purpose brush, and then I'm going to go ahead and apply some CLP to the firearm. Not a lot. I don't want to douse this thing, just enough so that way I can get things moist and then start scrubbing away at the parts here. I'm focusing on these areas in here, the parts where it has a lot of edges and curves and things like that, where carbon can accumulate, as well as in here and in the back locking block. And then further into the magazine well, you can have some carbon accumulate there, but generally that'll come out with the wipe of the rag. So the frame is really easy to get to. Again, we're just going to go ahead and scrub in here, make sure we get all the parts. For the sake of this video, I'm not going to get in too grave detail. I think you all get the point. So once I've brushed everything down, then I'm going to give a final wipe to this frame here and make sure that I take out all the carbon, and then every part of this is dry. The next time this frame will see CLP is for the final lubrication of the firearm just prior to assembly. So again, making sure, now if you have a light attachment like this one does, you're going to see a lot of carbon accumulate on the outer shell of the light attachment. You're just going to address that like anything else, give it a wipe down. Okay, and you might want to tackle this with the all-purpose brush. Now, if you are using the Niebling all-purpose brush, you have one side that's plastic bristles, another side that actually has a metal bristle. I don't recommend going to town with the metal bristle on this one, because you will take off the color coding of the light over here, but a little bit goes a long way. So a little bit of CLP and a very light brush of the metal brush here will go ahead and start to loose up and break that carbon that's here, and then you'll be able to wipe it down. Again, doesn't take that much elbow grease to do that, but you get the point. Wipe this down, everything is dry, and go ahead and set it aside. The next thing I'm going to address is my slide. Okay, same thing as before. I'm going to go ahead and wipe everything down, get all the easy carbon I can get off of it, so that way I can see really what I'm working with and what really needs the most attention. Now, paying attention to this slide here, the most common places where carbon will accumulate is back here, okay? Especially where the extractor lives. Right in there, you're gonna start to see carbon accumulate there, as well as the corners where the striker will come out of. Okay, so using my brush, I'm gonna go ahead and scrub in this area, so that way I can get all this carbon off. As well as the rails, you want to look at the female end of the rails here where the lower frame will slide into. Make sure you get those parts as well. And then the back part of the slide where the striker and the firing pin are, you're going to go ahead and get inside there. Now, some people will use Q-tips to get inside here. That's not a problem. Get in there, wipe down with a Q-tip, get all that carbon out that will build up there. You'll be hard pressed to get this carbon out with using just a all-purpose brush and a rag. So I certainly suggest carefully using a Q-tip in that crevice. Once that's done, again, you're going to wipe down all the carbon and CLP that has been generated by scrubbing and get this bone dry. Once that's done, then you're going to set this aside here. Now, the guide rod and spring, this is one of those types of guide rod and springs that are one piece or integrated. If you're running, say, a SIG 226, a Beretta 92, those types of guide rod and springs, they'll come apart. They're two pieces. So if it does come apart, go ahead and separate them. Wipe down the guide rod by itself. Should be fairly easy. And then, like I will do with here, with the guide rod and spring, I'm going to go ahead and scrub vertically through, just rotate it every so often, quarter turn. That way I get all parts of the coiling. And then what I like to do is get my fingers or fingernails in and then just rotate the guide rod and spring assembly here, so that way I get inside the coils of the spring. Once I've done that, I'll flip it and I'll pass it through the other way, because obviously two sides on the spring. So once that's done, again, wipe down both sides, make sure everything is dry, set it aside. Now, lastly, we will go over the barrel. Now the barrel, this is where I'm going to go ahead and use the the cleaning handle and then the bore brush. I'm going to put some CLP in here inside the barrel to start. And then I'm going to go ahead and run the bore brush right on through. Now, depending on how many rounds I put through, and we put probably a couple hundred rounds through this firearm this morning on the range. So to start, I'm going to get a little bit of resistance, but as I pass the bore brush through a few times, I start to see things, or feel rather, things loosening up, and I'm able to pass this through very easily at this point. One of the things I recommend is when you're passing the bore brush through, you want to make sure you get a full pass to the other side and out before you go ahead and change direction. If you try and change direction while you're passing the brush through and switch directions, you're going to have a heck of a time changing that direction, because as you pass the brushes through, they actually are an angle. So trying to change directions here, not going to happen that easily. So pull it all the way through, back and forth, until you get a good amount of scrubbing through and you start to feel that carbon break up. Once that's done, I'm going to go ahead and set my bore brush and everything aside. Then I'm going to give it a wipe down on the outside, because some of the carbon will accumulate on the outside on both sides. I also want to take my all-purpose brush and I want to address the feed ramp and the outside of the chamber here, because depending on how many rounds I've used, or essentially how long it's been since I've cleaned this, you'll start to see carbon accumulate on the crevices of the chamber here. So what I want to do is I want to make sure I address that. So I'm going to take a little bit of CLP and address the outside of my chamber. Typically, plastic side will do just fine. However, if you do have some accumulated carbon because it's dried on there or whatever, lightly address it with the brass side here and you'll be good to go. Once you're done, go ahead and wipe this down. And we're going to readdress the barrel again using the Niebling BoreBlitz. Now, this is a unique item here. Unlike other major products out there that are similar, this particular cord has no brush. So instead of using integrated bristles, which as many of us know will go flat upon the first few uses, this uses specialized rubber ball bearings that are specific to the caliber, that when you pass it through, it's going to go ahead and fill up in those lands and grooves. But because of the material, this will never go flat, and this will never damage the firearm as well. So we're going to go ahead and actually apply a little bit of the CLP towards what I call the wet side, which is the spongy section that's closest to the lanyard. We're going to go ahead and put a little bit of CLP over here. So that way, as this ball bearing right here passes through the barrel, every time that sponge is providing some CLP, and then that ball bearing will pass by it. So lanyard in. I'm going to pass only this side through the barrel and back and forth. I usually go one pass back and forth for every 10 rounds I've shot. So if I shot 200 rounds today, I'm going to do this 20 times. Now, I'm only doing this at this point 4 times. And this barrel had, again, 200 rounds running through it today. And I'm going to go ahead and do the final wipe through. So once you're done, I'm going to take the dry side, which has no CLP and another rubber ball bearing here. I'm going to pull through. Now, what we'll do is we have a close-up here, and we'll see that already with just a few passes, this barrel is actually quite clean. So with the exception of probably a few more passes, this thing is already clean and ready to go. So one of the advantages of using the BoreBlitz is that it's the caliber specific ball bearings will get in there and actually just grab everything in an easy pass, and this is easy to keep clean. So one of the things I highly recommend is picking one of these up, as it will make your cleaning experience that much easier. So once I have that done, again, I'm going to make sure everything is wiped down. This is dry. And now I'm ready for the final lubrication and reassembly. So once I have that done, I like to just get a little bit of CLP, and this is one of those things where we're final lubrication. We don't need to douse the firearm with a lot of lubrication. Just a little sliver right there will go a long way. I just want it to have a light coat on the outside here. Really not much. Okay, set that aside. I'm going to go ahead and dress my slide. Now on the slide, what I want to do is I want to get, again, just a light pass through the bottom of the slide here, and then again on the female inside of the rails. Okay, and then I'm just going to go ahead and wipe that on nice and easy. This thing is ready to go otherwise. We don't need to lubricate the whole thing, just the parts that will rub against the frame, the parts that move essentially. Okay, the guide rod and spring doesn't really need anything, so we'll just go ahead and set that aside. And finally, we'll address the lower frame. Now, the lower frame, the only parts that I want to put lubrication on, again, are the parts, the male ends of the parts that will go into the slide. Lower back locking block, okay, right here. Again, not that much. Wipe it on with my finger. And now I'm ready for reassembly. So let's make the slide assembly once again. So I'm going to take the barrel, essentially park it into the slide, make sure everything lays flat. Be careful of the guide rod and spring. Some of the firearms, they have integrated guide rod and springs. If you're not cautious, and I've seen this with students and clients before, you can put this thing in backwards. That is never a good day. Make sure that you are putting the proper ends on each side. So for this particular firearm, we have the curved or cornered edge over here. We're going to go ahead and insert it first this way. Compress the spring just slightly so that way it rests on the lip of the barrel here, okay? And then everything rests flush, ends collinear. Once I have that done, last part is I'm going to go ahead and line up the rails of the lower frame and the slide assembly, and go ahead and lock the slide to the rear, or just basically rack the slide all the way back. Ride it home just one to make sure it's locked into place, okay? Try it one more time, then I'm going to go ahead and functions test it. Squeeze the trigger, hold it back, rack the slide one more time, gently come off. I get my reset, squeeze again, I've completed my functions check. Rack one more time for storage, and now you are good to go. I'd go ahead and wipe off any excess CLP or lubrication here. And this firearm is clean. So as far as materials to clean the firearm, you don't really need much. You just need a few items: a good CLP, this cleaning handle and bore brush, along with a good all-purpose brush, and your BoreBlitz. If you want to get a more efficient clean, there are a couple other Niebling items out there, like the cleaning felts and things like that, that will also help clean the barrel in a more intense or in-depth clean. But for basic cleaning, this is all you really need in just a few minutes. Hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, like and subscribe with the buttons below, and hit that bell to be alerted for future videos.